Hello and welcome to Java Programming. Today, with yet another question. So, what's testing strategy and test plan? As a SDET in Java platform, how would you explain this question when you're asked in an interview what's a test strategy and a test plan? So, when you're a project lead or something in the organization, you need to write several documents, and one of them is testing strategy that is high level. Basically, you write your approach, how and why of testing. Why do we test this, and why? What is the scope of testing? What are the testing objectives? And also what tools we select for testing, right? For example, I could say I would go for Cypress or Java with Selenium approach, and I have a little bit of Rest Assured API testing, which I'm going to do Rest Assured, and so on. So these are the testing approaches. Then they ask you to do a POC, proof of concept, and once that's approved, then they would say, hey, okay, go on and do it in this approach if they feel that's feasible and good for the company. Otherwise, they would ask you to go for a different tool or a different approach. And so yeah, we have several different types of testing. One is functional testing, non-functional testing, automation testing, regression, and performance and security testing. Functional testing is where all the functional test cases, like for example, I am testing Amazon website, whether the product details page appears when I search for a particular item, is all the item details appearing properly? Am I able to add it to cart, then go to the checkout page, and am I able to purchase it properly? And what is unit testing, integration testing, and UAT? Unit testing is where, after I've finished my coding, if I'm a developer, I would test my code myself. That's the first level of testing. And then they see if my unit and other units are working properly in conjunction. So that would be integration testing. And then UAT is user acceptance testing. All the user acceptance test criteria have to be met or satisfied, which is when I give a go and that gets deployed onto the production server. And then there is smoke testing. Every time a new feature is launched or done, we do smoke testing so that all the things are working properly in the website and there's no breakage or no missing links and that sort of a thing. And what is regression testing? That is all the Jira test cases which are marked with regression, they are all executed. It's like all end-to-end scenarios, whether I'm able to purchase it through PayPal or through Apple Pay or different scenarios. Everything is tested out, and I do elaborate testing, which is called exploratory testing. I also do compatibility testing, cross-browser testing, that is testing everything on Google Chrome, then Firefox, Safari, and so on, wherever it needs to be supported. And I have written test cases for, Java Selenium framework, and then I have run a DevOps deployment where through CI/CD process, continuous integration, continuous deployment through the Jenkins framework, and then we set up a email goes to my product owner or business analyst, whomever needs to see the Cucumber reports. It's given to them, and then they are able to decide that these are passing, these are failing, why it fails, was there any problem or any code change that led to a particular part being broken. Those are the conclusions that are drawn, and the test or tools that are used are automation tools, which are perfect tools. It can be, previously it's always Java Selenium with Rest Assured. And backend testing, also we have a different framework, but if we're going to do manual testing, it would be for API testing, we use Postman. So POI testing. For Postman, it's mostly the JSON things that are tested, right? Like we have the JSON code as my payload. When the object I put that part, then there is a get or put request or post request, and I give my URL. And if there are any key value pairs like parameters that need to go in the headers, that's fed in, and then in the body we have the payload, and that information goes in. So hence there is all this in the API testing which we have in Postman. And we also have something which is called Charles Proxy. What Charles Proxy means is that it is a tool where we do a much more secure testing, which is also called SSL. So there will be some certifications. Once I download Charles on my machine, I do mostly, like for example, mobile testing using that, mobile app testing and all. And for testing those things, features on the Charles Proxy is like something that is between internet and your response, right? So once I execute my commands on Postman, I go to Charles Proxy. I would have already accepted the SSL proxy and the certifications, and then there is a tab which is appearing where I am able to see all the API calls go through. And there are several tabs like overview, content, summary, and so on. Mostly the content tab is what we look into, and we see 200 series. That's the status code. Is it going through, and is it a get call or put call? Whatever I have done through, pass the request through the Postman, I can track it here, where each and individual payload and what user information is trying to test this, everything gets tracked on the Charles Proxy server, where we get all the information, the content part and the overview and summary part. And that's how we do testing. And the test environment strategy is basically the environment data setup that we do, the tool setup. If I'm doing everything from scratch, then how would I go about implementing a Java Selenium framework where I do have all the object repositories in one, and every page will have a particular corresponding object repository page. Like for example, login will have login page where all the parameters like object repositories will be stored there, and so on. And then we have different testing tools for automation, defect tracking tools, performance tools, risk analysis and mitigation, high level tasks and how to address them, different roles and responsibilities, who does what in the testing process, and defect tracking, defect density, and code coverage also. Sometimes what parts of the code are not getting covered at all, those are identified, and then this is unreachable, it says. So those things you have to tell the developers to fix those parts, and try to keep the code coverage percentage high. And then entry exit criterias, conditions to start and stop particular testing, those are entry exit criterias. And testing it with various data and making sure it doesn't fail in any data, and those sort of defects will be logged and tracked on Jira. It will get closed also. We raise bugs on Jira, and then we say, is this a bug? First we decide with the developers and the team, and once I arrive, yes it is, so then I'm going to put the screenshots that I've got using the screenshot from the Java Selenium. Also lets you take screenshots, right? So you have those things, sometimes a video of going over all the steps and the environment in which I did the testing, all that is mentioned in the bug, and it's allocated to a particular person that this team has to do this bug fixing. And we have version control and also testing the artifact documents and managing that. Test plan, project specific documents are written, that is who, when, and where of testing. Yes, basically the test ID is identified, then there is an introduction like what all needs to be tested. We need to have a matrix of all the requirements and the test cases and one-to-one mapping and see that all the requirements are being tested thoroughly. And when we see that there's a complete coverage of all the test cases, nothing gets missed out, right? No functional testing gets missed out, and user acceptance criteria also have to be put. All the requirements have to be tested. Nothing should be left to by chance or something like that, because those are the ones we will catch in the production then, and that's going to be really costly. So taking time to come up with a good test plan, test approach, and delivering the quality product, even some reports, logs, etc. Whatever needs to be delivered, like test cases, be it script or reports or logs, everything we make a list and we deliver that. And the scope of testing is also included, that this is what, and these are like, if someone says no, that's a known bug, then we need to include that in the document saying these are known bugs and we are doing the release with this known bugs, and we have to get a sign off, because as a QA you are responsible for the end-to-end quality, and that nothing should go as a surprise to someone. Oh, we didn't know that this is a known bug. No, everything should be mentioned, and those points must be raised in the sign off meeting, and saying that these are the list of things which are still not working, but if it's consensus of everybody, then we release it. So the point is basically nothing should be hidden. Nothing should come as a surprise to the team and say this bug is there in the product. Should not go like that. And the timelines and planning and execution of reporting as well. And testers use several tools, environments, basically conditions for testing, exit criteria also is there, and risk contingency plan. What happens if such a risk arises? What's the mitigation? Then communication, reporting, and approval, final sign off with the stakeholders. Once everybody approves, okay, this is how it's supposed to work, then there's a sign off. That's the meeting we have with the stakeholders. And then there are several aspects, strategies, and test plans. Basically, the product releases and the overall approach for testing, execution details, and long-term, short-term strategies, and created by manager or test lead or an architect, and who finally did the test plan, which is tech lead or a QA lead. Those are all updated, and update frequency, purpose of defined methodology. All this are to be defined in your testing strategy. So that's pretty much about it. What the test plan is, what is testing strategy, and how would you test it in Java Selenium framework or using charge proxy if you use that, and Postman. This is how you can explain to them about how it is done in an office setup, and explain your project to them in a confident way. Once you go prepared, I'm sure you'll be able to crack the interview. So all the best, and don't forget to subscribe, and also let us know which company you're watching this from. I'm assuming you're preparing for interviews or that. So do stay in contact. If you come up with few questions, queries that you think I can answer, please feel free to comment. And this really helps me stay in touch with my subscribers. Thank you.